Welcome to the first ever Moab City Council and Grand County Council town hall meeting. First time that the two councils have come together to host a town hall. It's my pleasure and excitement to keep us on track and set the framework. We are here to listen and respond to comments that are made tonight. In the interest of giving everybody an equal opportunity to speak, I have asked the new city assistant manager, Joel. Why don't you stand up and turn around and so everyone can see your face? Hi, Joel. I've asked Joel to be our timekeeper. So we're all held accountable tonight, 2 minutes. If you've got a question or a comment, either, you've got 2 minutes. And then what I'd like to do is give the two councils the opportunity to respond, but I ask that we limit ourselves to no more than 2 of us responding to any question or comment made. And I would like to hold us to the 2-minute response time accountability as well. Does that seem fair?
2 minutes each or 2 minutes
total?
Period?
2 minutes each.
Okay.
So if you start speaking, you got 2 minutes to go. That goes for all of us and all of you. And I'm really excited to hear what you all have to bring to us tonight. We're not going to solve all the problems. We're certainly not going to hear all of the questions and concerns of the community, but this is a mighty good start. So, again, 2 minutes. Joel, you're going to keep us on time. And we can get started. We've got a podium here. There's a microphone. And if you'd like to come up to it and make a comment or ask a question, feel free to do so. We're here to listen and respond.
Did you ask them to say their name?
And yeah, when you do come up, please state your name. No pressure, but who would like to go first? Joe Kingsley. Thank you.
So, Madam Mayor, one deal.
Nope, we're going to start. Thank you.
I'm Joe Kingsley, and I'm working with Michael List on the passenger rail service to Moab. And I got a lengthy phone call from UDOT this morning. We talked for a full hour, and it seems like the legislature has funded 5 individuals to study the passenger rail proposal to Moab. And so I'm glad to be with that. And they have already hired one person to start working on the project. And I want to thank the county and the city for your support. And I'm hoping that the citizens of Moab and Grand County feel the same passion as we do, is to get some of the cars and vehicles off the roads and be able to. Everybody says, Joe, you're thinking in the 1880 venture, but maybe we can bring us up to the 1880 so we can have some mass transit and get the cars and trucks off the road. My 2 minutes are up.
Thank you, Joe. Now, let's not make a habit of too much clapping or hooting or hollering during this town hall. And thank you, I think it was Randy, thank you for setting the stage for us to silence our telephones. Was it your telephone that went off? Thanks, Randy. No? Well, there's a lot of you in here, and we'd love to hear from you. And feel free also you can start to queue yourselves up. If you'd like to make a line.
Hello, my name is Randy Mason. I operate a business in Grand County. I went into the city last week and tried to file a code complaint. And I'm being told that it's about 6 months for them to look at code complaints right now, which just seems a little odd for me. Like, we're making a lot of regulations, but if nobody's going to look at them in a 6-month period, that doesn't So I guess I sent you guys all an email, and I was hoping to get some response, but I haven't heard anything. So just want to put that out there and see if we're making all these codes, how can we not have any kind of enforcement? Seems really odd to me. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. I will say one thing in general, that a lot of the time when we get a response, a comment or a question to an entire council, there's always the question of who's going to respond. Sometimes, you know, I just want everybody in this room and in this community to know that you may or may not get a response to comments that you make to us, but it doesn't mean that we're not listening.
I was just going to say, I didn't see anything through the county, so I was just wondering if you sent them to the county too, or just.
It must have been just city.
I think it's city. That's it. Kaylin, do you want to respond?
So I was under the impression that Mona, our zoning code enforcement officer, responded to Randy. And so often, I mean, much of the work of the city happens at the administrative level. So I realize that perhaps we as the council could do better. We get a lot of email, and so sometimes if an administrative staff member responds, then I might be inclined to leave it as that. As to the broader concern, we've been hearing recently a fair amount about various code enforcement issues, and I think I, as well as the rest of the council, is concerned about that, our ability to enforce the codes that we write and manage the various impacts and conflicts that happen in the community. And I too was concerned about the potential 6-month response time, but based on the internal dialogues that we've had, I'm under the impression that an initial response may occur sooner, although some things may drag out significantly longer depending on whether or not the complaint has merit and how responsive the offending party is. But I wonder if perhaps we could have one of the city staff respond to that, provide some clarity.
Well, I don't know if this town hall is the place to do that, but I do think that I do want to echo with what Kaylin just said. That is true, that we are, as a city, trying to be, we are looking at our code compliance responsibility. We just recently created this position that Mona is in, and she started her job off to create the structure to be able to receive and then deal with complaints. And so the deeper we get into the timeline of it is, as it is of enforcing our code, the better we're going to get. We did take the step to look at, based on a discussion at our last council meeting, what do we need to create more support, perhaps another position in that department. And so we're talking about it, and we're looking at it, and we're grateful for that comment. Who's next? Don't be shy. I know, I can look at you and I know what you're going to comment. Come on up. Thanks.
I wanted to talk to you for a while. Welcome, Terry. Real short, because I only have 2 minutes.
Name.
I have great concerns. My name's Randy Day. If you didn't know, it's Randy Day. I have great concerns and also admiration for the way we're looking at affordable housing. I know what it is, and I understand what it takes, and I've seen it and built it and know what it is. So with that being said, I don't think our approach is quite correct. I don't think punishing one segment of our economy, and right now the best segment of our economy, is going to create what you want. It's not going to do it. You're the guys that deal the cards. The county and the city deal all the cards, and you look at them as you deal them out. And you keep raising the ante to get in the game. Every time I turn around, there's a new fee, a new impact, and now the last impact fee looks huge. This is a big deal. For a hotel, it's $1 million plus every time you turn around. You're attacking one segment. So proportionality, and I've given both these councils case law on proportionality, and I don't believe you will survive that, in my opinion, but we'll see how that pans out. With that being said, when you go to put an overlay or a zone on someone else's property, you know darn well they're going to be mad, and I've said it to you before. Affordable housing is like bacon. Everybody loves it, but nobody wants to raise the pig, okay? We got to have somebody willing to take the pig on, and that's a tough deal. And it's got to be not just in the center by the street, on Main Street or on the highway. It's got to be spread out across our valley to be proportionate to those neighborhoods, to be proportionate. You've got lots of acreage all over the east side of the valley that you could say, okay, we'll make each one of those lots in Cayento or in Navajo or in some other area have an affordable house on it. You could do that. You can make it legal. You can make it right. But the people that want it don't want it next door. You have to take that, and that's going to be a challenge. And I understand what it is because I've done it. And it is very difficult. But to attack one segment of your economy, the best segment that you got called tourism, okay? And I know those folks need a place to live. I've been trying to find them housing. I do it every day, and it's very difficult. Thank you for your efforts. I'd love to visit with you anytime about it.
Thank you, Randy. Who would like to comment or respond?
Yeah, look,
Yep.
I mean, if you
Go
wish.
for it.
Somebody else may want to tackle this one as well. So Randy, your points are well taken. I remember when John Curtis is here, you know, and he wandered out in the middle of the audience surrounded by, I mean, I thought that was great. So let me say that what was I going to say? The hotel, you know, there's a nexus. The whole idea is we think that people will still build hotels. Okay. I apologize because now I've lost my train of thought, and I apologize because I really feel like a fool right at this moment. I want you to
It's
know.
okay. It's okay.
Let's try it again another time.
Well, Randy, I want to say thank you for developing the housing that you have, and thank you for coming in to my office and meeting with me and having a very lively conversation about this very topic. It was my pleasure. Come in anytime. We disagree.
I agree.
I'll respond. I'll stand up too because I know people in the back can't see. Yes, it is difficult, and the difficulty often lies in what you were just saying, is that you work really hard, you work to create an overlay zone or to do an affordable housing or to shift, you know, where overnight rentals can be had. You're going to get people from all areas and complaints and such, and so it is our job, I agree, to take all those ideas, listen to everybody's point of view, and do our best to create policies that are balanced and protect neighborhoods while at the same time providing housing for the people who are doing the jobs in the community. And it is a balancing act.
Sure.
So I would just say, Randy, your words are not lost on me, and you know, of all of the tools that we're evaluating, what I've expressed is the most that I have the most concern with is the assured housing policy, which is the mandate for you know, hotels or nightly accommodations to build housing. I think it's a very aggressive, you know, public-driven approach. What I like about the high-density overlay is I feel like the requirement is a market-driven approach, which I think will be more effective. I appreciate Moab's tourism economy. I absolutely acknowledge and recognize that we are an economy that is reliant on tourism. You know, I have personally grown, you know, less sympathetic to not necessarily that sector, but certain elements of that sector. You know, I don't believe the best that Moab can do. I think a lot about, you know, what would my grandfather think if he saw the valley lined with, you know, cheap hotels all the way down to San Juan County. So I do think that there's an opportunity to preserve the ability for economic development to happen in commercial zoning. But you know, I weigh those kinds of things with infringing on people's private property rights. I have a great deal of appreciation for a lot of the people that have scraped together the money to sustain a living in Moab. And now that the values are going up, upward mobility is becoming possible for them. And I don't like slamming doors on those people, that own those commercial properties. So I hear what you're saying. I've been an advocate for, market-driven approaches. And when it comes to the assured housing policy, what I expressed to the county council and the city council when we looked at this is, the devil's in the details, and, exactly how aggressive that requirement is important to me to have an opinion on the subject.
Thanks, Curtis.
Yeah, I'm sorry. 30 seconds there.
All
What
right.
threw me off, Andy, was you really discussed two different subjects. One is the exaction from the hotels, which I fumbled around on. The other part of it is trying to build market rate housing versus assured housing. It's a really tricky thing to do. We're trying to grow the community in the sense of providing housing for our workforce. We know who all they are. At the same time, when everybody and their mother wants to move to Moab, okay, in their retirement years and so forth, and that's where builders make their best buck, and I don't blame them. So the trick for us is to negotiate that thin rail in there, and that's what the P80 ordinance and the high-density housing overlay are attempting to do. So so forgive me, because that's the other subject I really should have addressed right off the bat.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mike. Okay, who's up? Who's next?
You want me to go again?
No. You gotta wait for a little while. Unless nobody gets up, then it's Randy. Jim? Start with your name. Thanks for coming up.
My name is Jim Webster, and I'm on, I'm not representing the Board of Education, but I am on the Board of Education, and I'd like to, how does that thing come up?
It's just, you're fine.
I'm
It
fine.
works.
Okay.
You're fine with where you stand.
I was here for the earlier session. It was very informative. I would encourage both of these bodies to keep in mind that children are part of the community, and I know everybody here is supportive of the school district and kids and all that. There's a lot of actions, individual actions that all of you have taken over the years. But I think I would like to say to David, actually, the school district is growing, so it's not just retirees that are coming here. I think we have the highest number of high school students in 30 years. Wow. And that goes through the other schools as well. So the school student population is growing. We have tremendous issues. Mary she did talk a little bit about it in her session here on legislative stuff. We have some real distinct legislative needs. They're unique in our county, our school district, because of our tremendous property tax wealth and our tremendous income dearth of money. So that is really difficult for this school district. And we need to try to work on that. We have mental health professionals in each of our schools that are being paid for by either grant money or school district money. That's taken away from teachers, but that is something that's huge. Tourism impacts on the school district are real, and I could go down a list of free breakfast after school programs, before school programs, breakfast. I have a lot of other things to pass on, but I guess I'll do it at another date.
Wow. Thank you for your comments about the kids. Would anyone from either council like to respond?
Jim, I would just say, when it comes to the legislative stuff, if there's things on your radar that you need us to go to the mat on up there, keep me in mind.
Every year. Okay. This won't be any different. I'll be up there as well.
It might be worth our efforts to organize county, city, and school board as getting together as the legislative session becomes closer, so that we can organize and be more effective up there. So let's maybe get together at some point and get, meet.
Hi, welcome, thank you.
Thank you. Paige Holland. I'm here to ask a few questions and to make a few comments. First of all, I'd like to know how this body views the work that went into the general plan and the future land use plan, the time, money, volunteer effort, and the results of that, which recommended a general density growth of about 3.2 or 3.4 houses per acre throughout the valley. And suddenly this overlay comes in. So I would first of all like people to respond. Do you find value in it? Do you feel like it's antiquated, as I've been led to believe?
So is this particularly, you're talking county?
Yes.
The county general plan?
The county general plan and the future land use plan that's tied to that. And then the housing overlay, I can see some benefits of that, but the numbers just seem so extreme. For instance, I live in a rural residential zoned area, which I always expected would be 1 house per acre-ish. And it has been, and I think that planners might look at a map and go, wow, look at this. Here's all this land close to town. It's 1 house per acre. Let's put an overlay of 35 units per acre over this. Really? I mean, do you guys really think that that is a reasonable thing to impose on a neighborhood? Suddenly, I feel like you've got a big target on your back. And I know that you're supposed to take into account all of these things, but do you? Will you?
Thank you, Paige. Who would like to respond?
I'll respond to this. Evan and I went to a lot of the Planning Commission meetings. And a lot of thought and a lot of time was put into this. And it is not a done deal. It's far from a done deal. I know we had a workshop, was it a week ago Tuesday, or was it last Tuesday? Anyway, recently, where there were a lot of questions, a lot of ideas brought up. There will most likely be some type of overlay zone, but I myself see some real benefits to it, and I see some areas that really need to be tweaked. A lot of areas that need to be tweaked, areas that should be added to the overlay zone. There's one area that the person really wants to be part of it that isn't, is not in a neighborhood, makes sense to me. There's neighborhoods that I think would be impacted in a very negative way, and I can't support. So, and I think to continue to let us know your feelings about it, put your feelings forth so that we can address them, and know that as a council, we're going to work really hard. I know I am, to create a mechanism, because like Randy said, not anything we do, there's going to be people that aren't going to be happy about it. But I want to work really hard to make sure it's a good, balanced program that does not impact neighborhoods negatively and the people that live there. That has to be one of our big priorities, is to protect your quality of life. Thank you.
I would also say to your original question, we reference the general plan quite regularly and the future land use, and I personally look at that as a guiding principle for sure. And I also think that since the work began on those documents, that the county's changed a lot, in that time. And I think that it's important to have that as a living document that we are revisiting. And I think one of the things that's really important with high density overlay is this is an incentive. And so not just anyone would be able to utilize it. And so it's really one tool in a much larger toolbox to be able to support a handful of projects. There have been a lot of carrots dangled out on sticks for a very long time, and not a single project has taken advantage of that. And so our incentives haven't been sweet enough. And rather than piecemealing and trying to do things here and there and over here and over there, this overlay plan really is a plan so that everyone, it's very open, it's very honest, and it's on the books so that people can see the plan accordingly. And with the lack of enthusiasm of anyone taking any of these incentives that we've seen historically, honestly, I would be amazed if more than 3 property owners took advantage of this. So, I mean, that might be my own cynicism that I'm speaking, but I think that it's going to be a very slow pace getting rolled out.
Sure.
So there's probably some distance between the 2 council members you just heard and myself on a couple of these questions. Their answers. I actually think this tool will be effective. The requirement, you know, of housing locally employed citizens in these units, I think will net more, you know, affordable units for local citizens than a deed restricted requirement. And so I love that piece about this because you can't price locals out of the market and still sell the units. So I like that. The difficult piece of this, and one of the questions I asked of the Planning Commission is, how do you deal with, you know, this issue of disrupting neighborhoods? Because this is the consequence of not getting ahead, you know, of things like this. And we talk a lot about, well, if we had, you know, assured housing 20 years ago, 10 years ago, if we had this, but I deal with a lot of counties in the state and other states, and I know a lot of cities, and, you know, rarely are you going to find a governing body that's that far out ahead of these kinds of demands. And, you know, as much as we would like to think that we're very proactive, most of the things we do are reactive. And my opinion is that's consistent in government. And you're seeing this is a symptom of that. And so, you know, you own property that is included in this, you know, this overlay. And if this incentive works, you know, like I think it will, that has the potential to be very disruptive, you know, for you and your property values or your views. And, you know, one of the questions I asked when I first got, before I got elected, was very critical at how we're looking at affordable housing. And to wrap this up, I'd say, well, why aren't we building more than 3 stories? Well, because we don't want our, you know, our view sheds compromised. And so how do we have our cake and eat it too? And we've come to a point where we're looking at tools like this to naturally incentivize developments. And so I don't know, like you're hearing from other council members, I'll wrap this up.
Thank you.
You know, we want to protect neighborhoods, but the reality is if we vote to approve this tool, you're going to have a hard time increasing densities and not disrupting neighborhoods. And so I don't have a direct answer for you, you know, in your question that, you know, no, this isn't a positive thing. There are a lot of elements of this that are positive, and there are definitely some that offset that are negative. And we're going to have to work to mitigate that as much as possible.
I'd love to talk to you more about that.
Emily, may I
Thank you, Paige.
May I just say one real quick thing?
Sure.
Just please rest assured that there is going to be some real serious debate about this on the council level, because I think that you're seeing here 3 and now 4 differences of opinion about how it's all going to going to shake out. So we've got a lot of work to do, and you know, I won't take any more time. But
And there is a public hearing the 7th?
I actually was going to ask somebody from this council to give us a timeline so that Paige and others know how they can continue to be heard. And when
It is November 7th.
November 7th is a public hearing with the council, county council chambers. Okay.
Starts at a little after 4, so it'll be somewhere between 4 and, I don't know, 8.
So the meeting starts a little after 4.
That's not planning and zoning, that's...
No, I believe it went through planning and zoning and passed. It was approved and moved to the council for decision. And I believe that the planning commission passed it with all but 1 in favor. Is that correct?
that's correct.
But there were segments of the plan, that were not passed at that high. A lot of there were areas that were only like 3 to 4. So the entire document wasn't that solidly passed on.
Thank you all. That was really helpful. Judy, come on up. Oh. Ruth is saying it's 4:30.
The meeting starts at 4, and then the public hearings are usually towards the end of the meeting.
Thank you all. That was a good. Oh, Mary, here you go. Michael, introduce yourself, please.
My name is Michael Liss. I'm the chair of the Moab Transit Authority Study Committee, but I'm here for myself, not the committee, since that makes headlines. Mary. So we're on this transit committee. We're thinking about, I don't know if I can do this in 2 minutes, but I'll try. We're thinking about buses and how to get people around, okay? So then I see the high density overlay, and it's a tool in our toolbox. That's true, but it's a sledgehammer, okay? I'm the only one who did the math. I counted it all up. That high density overlay allows for 78,000 people. Okay, it's a little bit of overkill. So I step back and say, okay, I like the high density overlay. Where can you put it strategically, okay? For 20 years, I've been involved in urban planning as a client, as an investor, and in this field called new urbanism, and we're trying to create neighborhoods. So I wrote about it in the paper. I sent you all an article that I wrote up, and we have to create new neighborhoods because I love the last 2 hours. I think this is amazing, this meeting. When I saw the topic, I'm like, this is so cool because quality growth, I mean, what is growth? You know, it's learning, it's change, it's evolution. And whenever we talk about growth, it's always fear-based, and we're always losing something. Everyone's like, I'm losing this, I'm losing that. We need to change it around because if people here think I'm just losing something from what's happening, no one's going to be happy. I mean, it's like that thing you had, I forgot, encouraging, agnostic. It's almost like we're a caterpillar, you know, beautiful caterpillar crawling around, so happy. And something's happening and it's changing. It's going to become a butterfly, okay? This town could be something completely different, okay? What is it going to be? And if we have a vision for that the community is like, oh, that's cool. If I have a neighborhood at Spanish Valley Trail and Spanish Valley Drive, that's not a strip mall. It's a little strip of coffee shops and yoga studios. I could get into that. Or the last thing, I talked with the head of our UDOT region yesterday, and he's coming down with us. We're going to create a plan for the entire US 191. If we can get ahead of this and have frontage roads, have a beautiful bridge over the highway, at the Potash Road, we could do something really beautiful that thinks ahead. So it's not necessarily a question, but I would just look at this really seriously because this is a big step that could completely change the county.
Thank you. Thank you for that. More comments about the high-density overlay or the transportation piece? Kaylin?
Well, I'll just cross the...
Can you move your microphone around, just because Rachel said we got to get it closer.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh, I'll just step outside the city boundaries, but we were a partner in the economic nexus study that was recently done, and one thing that we learned from that, part of the reason why the incentives may not have been effective, is that the densities that we have just don't pencil for residential development that isn't marketed as overnight rentals. And what the study told us is that the densities just have to be significantly higher for market rate housing. To work. And so doing more planning to say where that density is makes sense. But to go back to the previous commenters' concerns about why is 35 units per acre or 25 units per acre, because in order to have market rate development, it has to be that dense. Not that we need to overbuild, or not that we can't plan about where is that more appropriate, rather than just allowing it in broad swaths of the valley. So I just think that's an important piece as to why we are doing this. But I totally hear the concerns, and maybe we in the city as well as in the county need to look at how we do project buffering better to protect the neighbors and the existing neighborhoods.
Project buffering?
Yeah.
Nice, I like that.
Which is in addition to the zoning. And it's actually in the county land use code.
I'm concerned about density for the sake of just more lots. I'm concerned that more lots will just be more expensive lots. I'm concerned about not having as much affordability assurance in the overlay, honestly, but it's y'all's business.
No, it's our business. You're in the county.
It's our business, your house today.
And you're in the county. The city's in the county.
My name is Garish Willis, and I'm here as an individual, but I'm the chair of the County Planning Commission. And Emily, have to take a different tact on what you said. It's not county business. You're a county citizen, just like I am. So everything that happens in the county is representative of what you want to. I feel like I'm probably going to preach to the choir here a little bit, but back in the 1880s, John Wesley Powell, who was actually did more than just took a couple of trips down the Grand Canyon, came up with a concept that geopolitical subdivisions ought to be done on a watershed basis. And I was really encouraged when I heard the discussion here tonight about reaching out to San Juan County and having joint meetings with San Juan County and having representatives go to their meetings and come back and report. I think that's what we need to do. We need to look at especially this part of Grand County, which is from Crescent Junction all the way to Blue Hills or even past, as one area that needs to have some comprehensive, at least coordination, if not planning, take place. And so I just wanted to say, I really encourage both Moab City and Grand County to reach out to San Juan County and let's see how we can coordinate better with them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Garish. To respond, I should say that, we as a city are looking at density and affordability a little differently than the county. So while you are all looking at your overlay, we are looking at the Plan Affordable Development. It's like a PUD, but it's a PAD. So if you get density, there's an assurance that it's going to be affordable housing. So I realized what I said was a little offhand, so I apologize. I know it's very much my business as a county resident. Curtis.
So
2 minutes.
Yeah. Look, raise your hands if you're ready to go. So just on the issue of San Juan County, I wanted to mention that these discussions are happening. And what's made it difficult to, over-formalize or formalize those things is there's this elephant in the room when these discussions happen with San Juan County that they feel like we're attempting to dictate to them what to do within their boundary because it shares our valley. And that's a tough nut to crack because if you reversed roles and acknowledge candidly the differences in politics, that's driven a lot of the lack of communication I think treatment would be a lot of the same, and that you wouldn't want another entity dictating to you, matters in your boundary. And so now there's that, and then there's the reality that it's the same damn valley. And we're adults, and we ought to be able to have some rational conversations about, how to plan for growth and do these things. And so I think formalizing these discussions are, helpful. The UDOT hotspot funding process that led to the funding of the downtown parking structures and that's bearing some fruit on the bypass. San Juan County is doing a similar process with UDOT that's access to the highway for development. And through that process, we've been able to have a lot of collaborative discussions about sharing our values and hopes for development in the valley with them, and then being able to understand and digest that. So I think that's a good foundation for, a more formalized process. Jerry McNeely, former county council member, works from Grand County, works for San Juan County. He's in our offices a lot. I meet with him a lot. Some of my politics line up with San Juan County, but some of my values and concerns with what happens in the valleys also runs counter to, I think, what some of San Juan County's development goals are. So I guess what my message is we're not deaf to it or blind to it. We understand that there needs to be a better form of collaboration, and that's in the works.
Many people weren't here earlier this evening, and we did decide during our joint city council meeting that we're going to set up a joint meeting with the county, San Juan County commissioners and ourselves, all three, and start to develop a system to communicate, not to dictate, but to have an open dialogue.
Because we can fit 3 more chairs right here.
Yeah.
No, they got a really big table down there.
Yeah. We could go down there. That would be fun too. Go through the Canyonlands.
I would just like to point out that I don't think we should be having these discussions about 78,000 people or the possibility of 50,000 people in San Juan County unless we have a real discussion and have the data for water and quality of life. I mean, I think that is, we have to have the data before, like, we just go off and let's do density here and there and, I mean, everywhere we can for the sake of density. I think it's a foolish step to make.
And all right. And also, just to piggyback on that, USGS is going to be publishing data and rolling out workshops to present the data. They thought it was going to be this time, like right now, that they were doing it right now. They're not, they're behind. And so I think what I'm hearing is January, February. Is that correct?
Is that right, Ruth?
Just till sometime in 2019. I didn't think it was going to be this soon.
Oh, maybe not even that soon.
I think they'll have a preliminary in like January, February, but not a final study, is what I understand.
All right. Come on up. Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
My name is Jim Enkelbride. I'm a local resident, and I'm just wondering now, the dust has sort of settled around our bunkhouse discussion with employers using these houses as high-density houses and putting a lot of people in there, parking problems, community problems. So my question now is, I had to be out of town the last couple of weeks quite a bit, but I'm back. I'm just curious to how we're moving forward with that. And, it's probably not a county issue so much, but hey, it's coming. Brace yourselves. This is what's going on in our community, and we had a discussion.
Thank you.
Emily and I, and it was a good discussion. And so now I'm just more curious as maybe a little response as where we're going with that and what's happening and what our thinking is now. And are we needing any more community involvement on that, or just where we're at and what our feelings are, where that we might make the best impact there to just control this in an R2 zone. So.
Thank you for that question. We've already talked, so who wants to?
I can take this one. I can start with this and someone else can follow up. I just wanted to thank all the residents who've come and spoken to us, because I think there are so many good issues raised for everybody here to think about on so many different levels. And originally we'd had discussion that we as a city council were going to have a workshop where we were going to discuss occupancy issues. And I mean, legally you can't, and you wouldn't want to limit it just to bunkhouses. So really for all kinds of housing, what laws do exist where nothing requires you, well, anyway, looking at laws that would say how many people safely, looking at fire or health codes can live in the same structure, and what does all that look like? And so originally we talked about having a whole workshop on that. I got an email from the mayor recently about talking about that some as part of a meeting we're having November 5th, but there are going to be a lot of other things on the agenda. So I guess one of my concerns was, I don't know if there's going to be enough time to adequately address all the issues that are tied into this. But maybe you
Well, so we have on our agenda for November 5th, it's a special meeting that we called because we wanted to have some time to talk about our PAD, our Planned Affordable Development, and our Workforce Housing Ordinance, what Randy was referring to. In addition, we added to that meeting the third item of talking about occupancy. We've got two things going on. We've got code compliance, and then we have occupancy implications. Staff is working on trying to tease out both sides that are really compounding what your concerns are. And so we are going to have a special meeting November 5th at 5.
I don't think we have a time yet. Do we have a time? Do you know, Joel? Or I think I asked David, and he was thinking maybe 6, but I don't think it's set in stone yet.
Well,
open forum there, or will that be a
we won't have public comment, but we will be deliberating on the comments that you have made, because I will say that your comments and the other comments that we've had from the community about this issue have definitely been heard. Staff is working on it. Council is deliberating about it, and
so probably come to the November 5th meeting and see what's happening, right?
Yep, and if you don't want to come in person, you can watch us on the YouTube or Facebook, but you can't always trust the internet, so you might as well come on down. Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Any further comments, Mike?
Yeah, let me see. So they're similar to the high-density overlay for the county. There's 2 housing things going on in the city, just to say it another way than what Emily did, that you should stay in tune with. One is the code revision that's going on that's been titled Eliminating Conditional Uses. But in the process of doing that, the term family has been eliminated to be replaced with the word household. Right now, the way the code stands, there's essentially no restriction on how many people could live in a single family house, and that won't stand. I am sure that's why Emily and Kaylin have brought up issues of occupancy rules, and we will discuss that. But don't panic. I'm sure something will happen. Because in my opinion anyway, we want to restrict in some fashion the number of people living in what used to be a single family home, so that the impacts to the neighborhood are very much like they used to be when related people lived there. And so mostly we're going to focus on the external impacts: yards, trash, noise, parking. That's the big one. But one tool for doing so, besides compliance, as Emily mentioned, is rules that say, depending on how many bedrooms you've got and how many off-street parking spaces you've got, kind of determine how many people can live in that house together, possibly with some sort of maximum limit. So all those rules are the kinds of things that we will be discussing before too long.
And then one final thing, the staff is talking about implementing licensure for people that have rentals. We don't want to put any unnecessary burden on people that rent a home out in our community, but we do want to have some type of accountability. So we are looking at business licensing structure as well. Who's next? Audrey.
Hello, everyone. I'm Audrey Graham, and I've been on I am not speaking for.
You know what, Audrey, just flip it up. And not the whole thing, just there you go.
I'm not speaking for the Housing Authority, but I'm on that board. I'm not speaking for the Land Trust Board or the Community Child Care Board. I'm not speaking for Friends of Arches and Canyonlands. Anyway.
You're on board.
I'm speaking as someone who has looked at this stuff for so long, and some of the things you're saying I just want everyone to remember how connected everything is. When we have people not wanting bunkhouses, we are going to have bunkhouses until we have more housing available that's in the affordable range. And that may mean, it is going to mean more density. That's all there is to it. We have to make a choice. And I don't see a lot of people in the audience who are living in cars. I don't see a lot of people, maybe there are some. I don't see a lot of people that are really, really struggling or living in these bunkhouses. I don't think people want to live in bunkhouses. I don't think employers want their people living in bunkhouses. So we need, as a community, to decide where, and I think that's what we're doing, and how to do this. But I've been looking at this since 1998, when somebody wanted to put five-story buildings, overnight rentals, up on the ridge up here, and that got my attention, and I wasn't in favor of that, and I'm extremely glad that that hasn't happened. I don't like a huge amount of density, but in reality, I'm with families every day in my job, 0 to 3-year-olds with disabilities who are living in very dilapidated trailers and are not, or cars, and campers, and whole families of 6 living in campers, in campgrounds. We have a huge problem, and until we change something, nothing's going to change in that way. And when we're talking about water, I'm terrified of the water situation. On the other hand, I want the water to be saved for the people who live here and the people who work here in our community. So if we want to limit motels, I know that's a big one, but if we want to do other things, that's fine. But there are those of us who've been working on this for 20 years who are trying to figure out the solutions, and I feel like we're closer to that than ever. And it is going to take political will to do some of these things, which means it's going to be hard, and some people aren't going to be in favor, and some people's homes are going to be impacted. On the other hand, their homes are worth a lot more. They can move. I'm sorry, but that includes my husband and I don't plan to move, even if I have higher density. So the last thing is that I love, for instance, Cinema Court. I think that's a great example. The Housing Authority was going to put 6 units of affordable housing where Cinema Court is sitting, and instead there are 60 families living there. That is design. It's good design that didn't increase the traffic terribly, that maybe has impacted a few neighbors, but I don't think it's noisy, I don't think it's messy. So we need to look at design. We need to keep in mind what the full goal is and what the full picture is. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. And thank you for serving on the council, county council for 8 years. It's nice to hear from former council members. Who's next? Don't be shy. Would anybody like to talk more about Audrey's comments? I guess I didn't really open it up.
May I say one?
Yeah. Mike, please, go ahead.
The city's planned affordable development,
yes.
Is that what it's called? The PAD, it's been called, at least we can pronounce it, yeah. It's like the high density overlay in some ways, in that it's scary, the numbers, all right, because the basic idea is that there's no minimum lot size, there's no minimum project size. The dwellings themselves can be very small. They're talking about 70 square foot bedrooms, maybe 100 square foot kitchens and that kind of thing. So if parking didn't get in the way, and it will, you could have a lot of dwellings parked on a relatively small space. At the city's planning commission has been working for more than a year trying to draft this legislation. And the way the ordinance reads right now, they're trying to apply the PAD will be applicable to most of the zones in the city. And I should add, by the way, that the PAD you only get it, all right, if it's deed restricted low income housing for people with more or less below median area incomes. So again, it's designed
80%
for
of
workforce housing. Okay, and then my personal opinion is, and I think there's at least one other council member who agrees with me, but I don't know how everybody, is that it should not be applied to all, certainly not all the residential zones in the city. And we have gotten a world of letters, and basically what I've said to people is, I'm willing to ask, kind of along the lines of what Audrey said, I'm willing to ask neighbors to bend in the sense to accept a little more disruption, a little more traffic, a little more parking on your street, but not to break. In that sense, you know, you moved into your R2 neighborhood, for example, and you expect a certain amount of space between you and your neighbor and a certain amount of hassle. And I'm not proposing dramatic changes to that. So that's what we're going to be negotiating, and that's why I keep telling people to stay tuned, because just like the county, this is a long ways from being resolved. So we do appreciate your input.
Thanks, Mike. Any other comments before Bruce comes up? Thank you, Bruce.
I'm Bruce Louthan.
Oh, that was dramatic.
I don't want to blow out your sound system.
Yeah.
Back I live. There's a lot of concern about living, you know, not in my backyard. The fact is, I live next to Walnut Lane and have for 35 years. We live in a cul-de-sac, not on Walnut Lane, and I have always expected that that would be developed in a more economically attractive, possibly high-density way. 40, I guess there's about 40 trailers in the area that the city is planning or hoping to buy and develop into 80 units. My question is, do you have a footprint in mind? Where would the building or buildings be? Is there kind of a plan, you know?
Very preliminary that we can share.
Do we know what we're talking about there?
Yes. We have a very preliminary plan that was presented to our council last Tuesday at a meeting, so you can actually go back to the YouTube stream if you wanted to look at that, but also...
I actually deal with paper quite much better.
So you can also make an appointment.
I'm really old.
You can make an appointment with Tracy Dudson, who's our housing specialist, to get a little more specificity. That's him right there.
Okay.
Tracy, stand up and introduce yourself. You're relatively new. I'm not sure everybody's met you.
Is that safe?
Yeah,
thanks.
Well, Bruce, I'm sorry. Wait, hold on. Bruce, are you done? He's done. We're done here.
Question, if we could see the footprint. I see it's matured to that point we can.
And we're going to be very transparent as we move forward with this development.
Let me just say I'm glad that you're thinking globally, but I'm also glad you're acting locally, as in doing something.
Thank you.
Rather than just
Thank you, Bruce.
complaining about the weather. Thank you.
Phew. Tracy, introduce yourself.
I'm Tracy Dudson. I'm the Senior Project Manager, specifically for affordable housing, and also the audio-visual guy.
Thank you. More comments? Vicki? Thank you.
I'm Vicki Webster. I live across the street from Jim Englebright, lucky me. And most of you on the City Council have heard from me a number of times about the bunkhouse issue, and I just wanted to follow up a little. That don't forget, one of the factors is the commercial use of property in an R2 residential zone. That is also an issue. I didn't hear that mentioned before. And this talk of, you know, if it gets too crowded for you, you can move away. And, you know, our neighbors have talked about how we're starting to feel forced out. So I would remind you that the people who live in our neighborhood are the plumbers, the electricians, the teachers, the city police officers, the sheriff's deputies, the school board members, the insurance agents. If you really create a situation where it's unpleasant for those people to move and live in Moab and they all move away, you don't really have a community anymore. And so what I would say to you is that we tolerated one really bad eyesore in our neighborhood for about 10 years. And we just sucked it up and we thought, you know, they need employee housing, we're not gonna complain. And then all of a sudden there were 3 of them. And all of a sudden they're using them for commercial purposes. And that makes me think that maybe the answer is to compromise and, you know, okay, allow some increased density, allow some of these places, but limit their numbers and limit their density, because that's really what's causing the stress on your long-term residents, those of us who've lived here for decades and hope to live here for more decades. So I'd ask you to think about those two things too. Thank you.
Thank you. Councils?
I'm just hoping when we meet on the 5th of November that we can not forget that, yeah, there's a list of issues involved. Yeah, it's not just simply one item that complicates this matter. Yeah, crosses into code enforcement, crosses into, what we have described historically as the R2. And
well, at least on the 5th, what we're going to talk about is occupancy. So that's how I sort of labeled that, because yeah, there are a number of things, and staff is putting together stuff to present to us from licensing, licensing being one of them, to other items. So what? Nothing about a bag ban? Jim? Well, I guess we got to give it to Randy first. Did you want to make another comment? Because you're before Jim.
Oh, we got somebody.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. No.
Wow.
No.
You can go after.
No.
My name's Jessica O'Leary. I live in the city, and I have two things that I think tie together, and I think it all comes down to quality of life and maintaining quality and neighborhood. One, I have real concern with changing any zoning from family to household. And I have concern because it seems to me, driving around the city, we can't enforce codes now. So how are we going to use changing codes as any sort of tool to fix any of our problem? We can't enforce it. It's meaningless. So maintaining quality of neighborhoods in the city, I think, is important. And then I think people get really nervous about high density because they think of projects, Cinema Court may be nice and well done, but how is it connected to our community? You have to get in a car and drive into town. If you work in town, there's no paths. Are there parks? Is there walking? Are there shops? Can you go get groceries from living there? So we end up with all these developments that are isolated, and those people cannot be included in our community. So I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel to get high density. If you drive the I-70 corridor, I encourage you to get off at Edwards and look at places like Miller Ranch, which has townhomes, apartments, and single-family homes. It's deed restricted, so it's for lower income, but it's a really nice place to be. You can walk to parks, you can walk to schools, you can walk to shops, and that's ideally, I think, what we all want. We want neighborhood, community, and maintaining the quality of life of why we moved to Moab.
Thanks. Just one second. Did anybody want to respond to Jessica?
I'll respond. So you covered a number of items. One is code enforcement, and we do, as was previously mentioned, we do now have a code enforcement officer. It is still complaint driven. We want to address the things that are really bothering people rather than just trying to enforce every code everywhere, because we're concerned that might be perceived as, and may be heavy-handed. But we do have a person working on it and a process. And one of the concerns that has been expressed is the anonymity of code complaints. They're not anonymous. You are required to own it. But my understanding is that unless it goes to court, that the complainant's identity is protected up until that point.
Confidential to the city, isn't that the way David described it? Yeah.
Yes. And then as far as the cinema court and connectivity, we have contracted with a couple of planning firms to do small area plans, including the Powerhouse Lane area, because there is a lot of potential there for new development. And we would like to do a good job, and it sounds like at least some of the landowners there may be receptive to that. So that point is well taken, and we hope to address some of those issues.
Yeah, I would just chime in on that as well, that the county is looking in the future having a parks department, because a lot of times when there's these developments, like you've noticed, that require a green space, they're often neglected and they become weeds, and then that's lost space that couldn't have been utilized for actual housing. And so we're well aware of that, and we're trying to identify places where we could have more of a community park, and really we're making moves to ensure the quality of life that we all appreciate, and that once we approve next year's budget, there will be things like that coming down the pipe.
And there is a plan to create bike paths that go all the way out, all the way to Kings Lake, and connect all these places so that we have transportation that is non-motorized.
Emily, can I just briefly explain? So one of the reasons the changing of the family definition to household came up is that apparently the city's existing definition of family is no longer legal. So for people who don't know our existing definition of family, like we allow 1 or 2 family dwellings in the R1 and the R2 zone. And our existing definition basically talks about a number of related individuals, it doesn't specify number, and then up to 2 unrelated individuals. And apparently the law has changed now where that is no longer legal. So you have to change it in some way. And we have proposed language for household, which is very open-ended, but we did inquire about what the law now states about like maximum number of unrelated people. And according to current law, you can't say anything that will disallow up to 4 unrelated people to live together, but you could, for example, have code that says, no more than 4 unrelated, if that was something you wanted to apply within a certain zone. But just so people are clear that the law has changed from, what we used to at one point have something up to 2 unrelated people, and now that's minimum of 4.
So the changing from family to household, it's an occupancy implication, but it is part of a bigger change, Chapter 17 revision. We are taking the bigger picture of the Chapter 17 code amendment is to take conditional uses and make them permanent or make them go away. And I do want to point out that we have, as a council, decided to take bed and breakfast completely out of our residential. So there are good things that are in the Chapter 17 code revision. The changing of the name from family to household doesn't change it doesn't change any implication of enforcement one way or the other. We have work to do, and we're committed to doing that work.
Hi, my name is Salona Cisco. I guess I'm an intern with CR, disclaimer, and not asked to be here. When I was visiting Seattle earlier this year, I was disappointed to see the low housing density that I saw, which resulted from NIMBY attitudes. And when I was there, as late as it was, there was starting to be development in areas where there was high frequency transit stops for those areas to be high density, to have lots of housing. And I think that's really good, and that the analog here in Moab would be to have high density housing along the bike path, and anywhere where there's going to be a bike path, plans for that. Me currently, I'm working on building a bunkhouse, and I would love to build more bunkhouses here in Moab, or if not me, for my friends to have opportunities to build more bunkhouses. I think that they can be a great way for housing employees, or even if they're not employed by the same organization, for people to live together in a non-nuclear family setting, redefining their ways their means of building community and building family and relationships. And that's, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Does anybody want to respond?
I just want to say one thing. I want you guys, I appreciate these two in particular so much, because a few months ago when the Walnut Lane property came on the market, it was this one who pointed us to it, and it's, wow, it's up for sale. This one jumped right on it with a burst of enthusiasm, said this is what the city needs, and I agree entirely, because it fits into the notion that housing ideally ought to be close into the city center, so you don't have to get in your car to come over this way. So it's a great spot for this kind of thing, and sure, we're sensitive to try to pulling in high-density development and close to the center of town, and the county is too, because I served some years on the county board, and that was the purpose of a future overlay map that tried to suck in the more dense housing in towards the center of town, try to minimize that. But mostly I just want to say thank you so much to you guys for making all this, making Walnut Lane happen.
Thank you.
Well, and you know, with housing typology, it's important for us to recognize too that we have transient employment. You know, we've got river guides, we have bike guides, mechanics, servers that may not stay with us all year long, and the housing typology for that population looks different, and so we have to decide where we want to see that, and it's complicated because so much of, at least in Moab City, we're R2, so we're trying to. This is all a big massage.
Good to go?
Yeah, good to go.
All right, well, I thought I'd bring up a topic since you...
Your name?
We need some duct tape.
Sorry.
No
so my
worries.
name is Kellen Brewer. I actually work at Four Corners Behavioral Health. I'm not representing anything really substantial here or their views at all, right? But it's more in relation to the plastic bag ban. You know, you wanted to call... You were wondering if there was any concerns, and so I figured I'd give you a few concerns. So those of you who shop at City Market, which is, I assume, a lot of you, if you live in Moab, right, are very familiar with the hectic and the chaotic lines that are there, especially with the tourism and stuff like that. These lines are super long, and I feel like the plastic bag ban is only going to add to that. With tourists that don't know they're supposed to bring bags to the party, right? Or citizens with lots of families, screaming kids, right? We all know how fun it is to be in City Market with
yes, we
waiting
do.
and trying to bag our own stuff, right?
Our own kids.
Right, absolutely. So I guess my question was, like I wanted to compliment on all the awesome things that we've done for the environment around Moab. We're very progressive that way. You know, if you even look outside, you can see the rechargeable car batteries and stations out there. So we're pretty progressive there. So my concern is just with local businesses. I know City Market isn't a local business, but it still feeds and
it is.
the citizens. So that's my concern is a little bit of a selfish one, but I think that most politics are pretty selfish. We all kind of stand up for what we believe in, right? So that's my concern. I was just wondering if that's something that you considered.
Thank you.
I'd like to address that. For the tourists, Elaine Geiser from the Travel Council is right now getting that up and on the page. So when people come to visit Moab, that's going to be right front and center that you need to bring your own bags to the different businesses in town. Yes, Ruth, I see you.
Actually, she's going to be making these bags available. She'll spend promotional dollars to make these bags available for the tourists, and they'll have them available in hotels, and I don't know where.
So you know, we have recognized that, and Kroger was starting to eliminate bags anyway. So the City Market was on that train already before the city made the wise choice, in my opinion, to ban plastic bags because they are killing our country, our plastic. So, yes, so I think there's going to be ways we're going to help the tourists know what's happening and also give them a bag.
You can still get paper. You can still get paper bags.
Can I just add? Oh, okay. Go ahead.
You can solve the problem with the lines if you shop when I do. Go at 6 in the morning on Friday morning. There's nobody there.
11 p.m.
I think, and the other thing is, even our tourists can read, and they can read that they need to bring their own bags. Our animals can't, our watershed can't, our environment can't. And that was my biggest impetus, was the beings that couldn't read. We can teach humans to bring their own bags. And they're not a great deal of what goes into our landfill, but they are really toxic to the rest of our environment.
And I was just going to let people know that the city communications director, sustainability director are helping, us. And we have this flyer, for example, and, different businesses can come up with their own. We're going to make them available to local businesses to remind people to bring their own bag. You can put it in the window of a business or, just in the doorway to help remind people, because sometimes as you're heading in the door, that's just as easy a time to turn around. But as we've said, paper bags are an option. Every individual business has the option to charge for bags if they want to. And City Market has worked with other communities that have already gone through this. So they work with this model, and they're on board and happy to help do education. So, so I think we're good to go.
They're also, City Market is also trying to, or they are going to implement a scan as you go. So you can put your stuff in your very own bags the way you want to and be done.
City Market's rolling out some cool stuff. It's 8:17. I'd like to implement the 7th inning stretch for these councils because we've been here since 5. So if you would give us the opportunity.
Stretch. You're leaving. Well, we'll see you later. Stretching.
We're going to be here for another 20 minutes or 40 minutes. Are we all committed to being here until 9?
At this point, just go.
Yeah, I know. Lock it. Slumber party. Okay, it was just a stretch. It was just a stretch. We're just, settle down. We're just stretching. Dun, 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 dun.
Fix that. How about Keegan?
Everybody's leaving. Wow. Should have thought about that one 20 minutes ago. No. Just kidding.
Excellent, except
We're
you
here.
have to make it something Indian because we're not allowed to have any more time.
Right, we're out of soda.
Oh, wait, we can, it's probably an Indian word here.
Indian dish that starts with that.
Yeah, there's probably some Indian word in this shot. Maybe, I mean, that is very cute.
Pardon?
That is very cute. Yeah.
This thing about the legislature requiring bed and breakfast or whatever, the city can require.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Bruce. Look at this. You're making me use my gavel. I only use it to be funny. But seriously.
No ironic gaveling.
Notes for yourself?
Got a lot to talk about. I know there's more comments. I know you people. I know there are comments.
You see,
we want to be included in this
Getting
conversation.
spinning out.
Hush.
Hush.
Apparently
We might be done here.
Better get out a revolver.
Your council
River knife?
is gone. Jeez. We've got long meetings. We know long meetings. They don't know long meetings.
Mayor, I'm here representing the Moab City
Don't get no. No. We're gonna go for another 30, 40 minutes. We'll go till 9. Oh, we've got comments. Okay, everybody. Let's settle down. Let's take our seats. Let's duct tape that microphone.
Oh, shucks, that's all.
That microphone was bruised. Bruised. Okay, that was a nice stretch. It gave me the opportunity to pay respects to my growing up watching baseball with my dad. Okay. Judy.
Hi, I'm Judy Powers, and it's always hard for me to know which things to talk about. So, by the way, I do want to say I really appreciate all your hard work. I really know how hard this is. I know the political will is really tough. I'm hoping that when people present you ideas, they're trying to be more proactive instead of just criticizing. I think we all need to participate in ideas. Oh, by the way, I am on the Housing Authority Board. I don't represent the Housing Authority Board, but if you want to find out what we're doing, come on down. We're doing some really exciting things, as is the city. So please try and be kind to these guys. They're really working hard, and I really feel really strongly about this at this time. I think we really do need to work together as a community.
Thank you, Judy.
You're welcome. I'm really worried about losing the neighborhoods. I try not to cry when I come here. God dang it. I don't like the Airbnbs. I don't like the household thing. And I'm very concerned about all the overnight rentals in town. I'm sorry, I shouldn't bring the names, but there's Entrada and Moab. I'm so sorry it's not a residential area. So sorry, it's overnight rentals. I just walked by there today. It's so ugly. I'm really sorry we're losing our downtown as a place for the locals to actually be. I'm amazed how much overnight rentals are there, that the doctors and the dentists and everybody else has to move out of town. However, I may be a little bit hypocritical. I'm really aware we need density in town. I am on the Housing Authority Board. The low-income people do have trouble with transportation. I wish we could have much more of that in town. Some of the Housing Authority Board stuff has been, it's not affordable to buy the land in town. So unless we have more density, we won't be able to do it. And we need some perspective. We are a growing city. We're still small, but we're a growing city. And the density issue, I mean, God, I lived in New York City. I mean, come on, let's get some perspective here. Oh my gosh, I'm only 4 lines into my whole thing. Oh well.
Thank you.
Judy, I agree about Entrada. It's in my neighborhood.
The code that allowed Entrada has since been changed, so.
It has. Yeah.
Not by this council, but just so you know.
Okay.
My name is Tom Moreau. I live in the city, and it seems like 12 years ago there was a big water study that was going to take years and years and years, and it may have showed up 3 years ago or 2 years ago, and we said, whoa, we got like half the water we thought we had. And at that point, I wondered, why didn't the city and the county say right then, we're going to limit the low flow showers in every hotel in the city and every new hotel and every condo development, and maybe give incentives to homeowners to get low flow in our homes. And now it sounds like there's a new water study and there's going to be less water, and you got this huge round of applause when Karen spoke about water, and it's important to everybody here. So if we're building all these new hotels and new developments, is that something you talk about, these low flow shower heads? Because when we go vacation in Vegas, there's a wisp of water coming out of that shower, and it's fine, we deal with it. And we live in a desert, our visitors know it's a desert, and I think they'll be fine with it too, just like we're fine with it when we go to Vegas. So I want you to incorporate that in the planning of the future of our community.
Thank you. We do have our sustainability director, Dr. Rosemary Russo. She talks about low flow a lot. And she is working with businesses on this program called Green to Gold, where she is incentivizing businesses. She's done door hangers to communicate with visitors at hotels, implications of water. I can pass it off to some other council members to comment, but we created that position to focus on sustainability issues one of the most important ones being water. Water is really complicated, and when it coincides with development, it's like we were just saying earlier, like the implications of water quantity and how they relate to development is a difficult nut to crack, but we are definitely talking about it. I would say every council meeting we talk about water, and I wouldn't be surprised if when we meet in January as a city council and go over our administrative work plan, that water doesn't, well, rise to the surface as continuing to be an important goal.
As governing bodies, if you believe the science, you can do something about it. You can mandate, not just incentivize. I think Vegas mandates those hotels to have those wispy shower heads, and we could do the same, and I would encourage you to do the same. Do something.
Yeah, I wish Rosemary were here, but I think as much as we like to blame the whole thing on hotels, it's not just them. A lot of people in town use their culinary water to water their lawns with, and they're doing better about watering at night. We had a graph out here the other night that ostensibly showed that most of the watering goes on at night, which I have a hard time believing, but we could do more. The water in 1970, there was a 22,000 acre foot estimate by the USGS for our local reservoir. The latest is like 12 to 14,000, so it's not quite half, but it is substantially down. The city has hired a hydrologist, Ken Combe, and he's in the next few months is supposed to publish his own estimate of how much sustainable water we have, so-called safe yield. And I think that water, kind of like trying to take another pound of weight out of your car, was, getting that last pound out as opposed to getting the first pound out is going to be harder. So water's sure to get more expensive, require more monitoring, more science, and all that kind of good stuff. Having said all that, it's just kind of the nature of the way human beings are, that we don't really do anything serious about it until we run out. I mean, you think we would be smarter than that? But so I expect that when, for example, there's been a recommendation to comply with state standards that we drill another well here in town, presumably out by the golf course, or drill a redundant well and so forth. And the aquifer oftentimes has been likened to putting drinking straws in a glass. So it's not clear whether if we were to put another well in there to take advantage of our rather nice set of water rights, then we won't be stealing water from somebody else. So this business of testing drawdown on wells is sure to be a subject. The county's actually in worse shape than we are city-wise. They've got some wells, but they don't have the margin that we do, and their population is actually growing faster than ours. So you're quite correct. It does bear keeping a close eye on.
SustainableMoab.com is the website.
The good news is we aren't mining our aquifer at this point. Our last study showed that we are not using as much water as being put in yearly into our aquifer. The aquifer changes because of climate, not climate, but the weather. Like this year, our aquifer is a little bit down, and other years it's a little bit up, and it goes up and down like that. But so far, if it's not climate change that caused the problem on La Salle Mountains, we're lucky right now because we aren't mining. We're not taking more than we're using, and that's what our last study showed us. And the study that will be coming out at the end soon will show how much we can use, where our capacity is. And I'm really excited about that study because when it does come out, I think it will give us the data we need to enforce and say, this is how it will happen. So I see within a year or less, your elected officials will have not just the will, but the ability to back that will up with facts. And so I'm very excited about this water study that's coming out.
Curtis?
So this will continue to be a big issue naturally, and I've served as Grand County's liaison to the Water Special Service District, and Mike serves as the city's liaison. And when the draft results of this study came out, you know, one of the discussions was, well, there are scientists that want more money to do more monitoring. And of the water board is a really good board, and I encourage people to attend those meetings. And there's a you know, a wide range of different viewpoints, people from different backgrounds, but I always say it's the most serious board in the community because they really, no offense, but you know, they really handle business. And when the issue came up to invest in monitoring equipment, you know, to monitor the aquifer levels, it was a no question unanimous vote, even with discussion, because even if we all, you know, disagree on, you know, climate issues or whatever, you know, the facts are the facts, and we can all agree that we need to monitor the water levels and the aquifer levels and understand what the recharge rates are, because there's absolutely no denying that it's essential for life. Without water, it's, you know, it's curtains. So I think, you know, I feel like everyone's very supportive of the assessments being done, you know, by the USGS, and I appreciate the city kind of taking a more, you know, independent approach to better understanding or, you know, enhancing the analysis. But I think, you know, what Mary's saying is, you know, once we can better understand the facts, and it's not an emergency situation right now, we have the time to do that. I'm absolutely would be supportive of measures like that just makes sense. It's just common sense, you know, to limit unnecessary and wasteful water use. And, you know, we do live in a desert. We've had droughts in this community that, you know, drove the Anasazi out of this region. And so it's real, it can happen. And so appreciate the question, comments.
Anybody else?
Talked to your son yesterday. He called to ask about Prop 9. There's a young man who is taking his voting seriously.
I bet I know who his son is.
I think we do. He was our intern.
Yeah.
Come on up. Who's next? Great. Welcome. Thank you.
My name is Adam Fleming. I am in the tourism industry. I came to Moab last year, and then I left for the winter, as many people do in my line of work. And now I'm back, and I hope to stay year-round. It took me a long time to find housing last year. It took me a long time to find housing this year as well. And this point of view, I've heard a lot of people, a lot of homeowners, and people that have been in the community a long time speak today, and I just want to let you know there are people like myself who are looking for housing as well. And please be considerate of our needs. We might not be up here speaking as much because might not be in town, or might not attend these types of things, but our needs are valid as well. So please consider us when all these housing topics are coming up.
And what part of the workforce are you? What do you do?
I am a climbing and canyoneering guide.
A guide.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for your work. Thank you. I've been commenting that there's a bounce effect in Moab, and it's related to housing. So people come to Moab to fill essential workforce positions, and they can't find a home, and they bounce. And it's really important for us to understand, with all the numbers and the data and the studies that we have, and when we're looking at ourselves and our own, you know, population that's growing within, that we also have a true bounce effect for people that cannot land in Moab, stabilize, you know, and do the grow up thing. The thing that was afforded to me because housing was affordable to buy when I moved to Moab. So thank you for that comment.
Looks like we're done.
Sure. Because I know you've got several things you could be talking
the guy
about.
at the buffet that's back up.
Yeah, dessert.
I would just like to add to this gentleman's comment. I have a rental property in Castle Valley, and my tenant gave me the necessary 30-day notice that they were moving out. I posted online, this house coming up in 30 days. Within 30 minutes, I had 10 applicants.
Yep.
The second applicant was a school teacher at the high school who lives in Grand Junction, or he rents in Grand Junction because he can't find anything here. He was so excited that he could at least be closer to the high school by living in Castle Valley. And I told him he was second in line. And unfortunately, he still commutes to the high school from Grand Junction. That's reality. So we do have a housing problem. And it's in all sectors of our community. And, you know, we're working on it. I know the high density overlay and so forth and so on. But our need is real, and it is now for all segments of our community.
I'm just going to say something because you know, I've been learning a thing or two about housing. We need to swing more hammers. We need to build more homes. Our construction industry is constrained. We've got a rural issue here in Moab with the number of people that are qualified to build. All of our vendors are busy all the time. Plumbers, electricians, general contractors. I will just say there is one solution that no one ever really talks about. And the Department of Professional Licensing in our state is really strict with who can get a license and who can swing a hammer. And I, for one, would love to see more push from our community and others that would like to see more people have the opportunity to build, including women. Right now, in order to be a general contractor, you have to have been a W-2 employee and have somebody sign off on your licensure. And if people are reluctant to hire women, women are not going to be able to get licensed to do this work. So if we want to expand the workforce in housing, well, we could put a little pressure on the Department of Professional Licensing to deregulate. Just a thought that I've been having.
I like deregulation.
Yeah, we agree.
Is that a legislative priority, or is it happening?
I'm going to add it right now to our list of legislative priorities. I think that's actually part of, but I'm not sure if it's implicit in some of the suggestions that are made to the that are going to be made.
But I wondered if DOPL could do it administratively, or if it has to go through the legislature. Something to explore.
Yeah.
There's definitely, what I will say though, I agree that there are a lot of capable people that are able to build that are, you know, kind of pent up due to those licensing requirements, contractors. So I agree with that. And it's on my list now too.
Oh, good.
And I want to point out that it may not last forever. I mean, I read Salt Lake paper this morning, says because the home prices are so high, the sales is going down. So, you know, it cycles. It could be in another year or two, for better or for worse. You'll be able to find a builder. So,
Oh.
But can you get an electrician or a plumber?
Can you get a plumber on a Saturday? Mallory?
My name is Mallory Nassau, and I work for the Grand County School District in a new position as the community coordinator. And so I will speak from the school district perspective, at least as my capacity allows, in saying that I appreciate all that you're doing, and I understand that you guys are all doing a lot along with the Housing Authority and many others to try and address some of the issues that we're facing and that we'll continue to face over the next few years. But I also think it's important for me to speak up and share what the school district is doing, starting with my position, because my position is really working not necessarily just with the school district, but with the community. And we're going to have the Key Leader Board, among other things. We recognize that you can't create change just from the policy and from the leaders, but that we need to work from the bottom up as well. And we're going to start that from the top, but also follow that up very quickly from the bottom with the key leader board that will actually meet next week. And we're going to use a collective impact model that has been used by the United Way, a number of agencies, communities, local government around the country to work together and select where are we going to all agree to address an issue. Where are we going to start? Because we can all start on different pieces, but if we're not all working together, we won't be able to achieve as much. And just sitting here today, I'm sure my time's almost up. There's so many things that I'm hearing that are already going to be pieces tying together. For example, we have Project Bike Tech launching next week through the high school CTE program, and it's going to be a bike lab where my hope is we'll get things like bikes from Wabi Sabi that they get donated that are broken, that then the school and the students can learn these skills, repair bikes, and hopefully donate them to entities like CKVN, the Multicultural Center, Workforce Services, many individuals that need this, and then with that comes bike paths. So it's perfect, I think, a tie-in for how we can all start piecing these things together as a community. And I have to give a quick plug for a resource guide that we're coming up with. Myself, the Multicultural Center, CKVN, and Wabi Sabi, go figure, are all working together to come up with an updated resource guide for the community. And we are going to actually create it in a form that will have different entities or individuals complete. And then we're looking at how we can go about creating an actual website similar to what the Free Health Clinic has, but more updated and something that connects to a live system. So as soon as there's a change, we can go in and make that, and everybody will immediately see that updated information. So we're also going to have a few different work groups that everybody is welcome to, starting with the data priorities work group. We'll have a resource assessment work group, and most importantly, a strategy development work group so that we can go to the key leader board, not just with one strategy aimed at one organization, but with a group of ideas, concepts, programs, models, and figure out kind of what works for Moab. Where can we select these triggers and hope and measure carefully that it's actually having the intended outcome. So I hope to work with you all, and I know a number of you will be on the key leader board, and I'm excited and grateful.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you. Third Wednesday of the month at 5:15.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mallory, for all the work that you're doing. And thanks to the Grand County School District for having school district for creating your position to do this work. I wish we could all go on a river trip together and get to know you and hear more about it and support you. Jim.
I'm Jim Webster. I'm on the school board, but I'm not representing the school board. But I do want to follow up with what Mallory had to say. This is a position that is intended to try to break down barriers between organizations and entities within our community. We all work in our silos, and the goal is to try to break those down so we can better integrate. I would love for the school board to better integrate with the city council and the county council, for example. So what she's doing is huge work, and I'm excited about that. I did want to follow up on something I said earlier. Actually, our school student count is up 71 from last year. That's like 2.5 classrooms at HMK. It's significant. It's like a 5% student growth, whereas what we've seen for years and years and years is 2% a year, and then it drops 2% up and down. But it's significant. I want to point out some collaboration that the school district had recently, maybe 10 years ago, but San Juan County, we've been talking about that. The school district extended into the private property of San Juan County in Spanish Valley. And those parents, those families down there whose kids go to our schools, now are represented by our school district. So that tax money that they does not go to the San Juan district, it comes here to our school district. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the tourism impacts on the school district. I was at HMK for the lockdown drill that happened last week, and I counted 30 different staff members at HMK Elementary who work with, in my mind, all are significantly working with some of the families, the children of families that we talk about that are impacted by intergenerational poverty, which is going to be a focus of Mallory and is the school district. But right now, those 30 employees are supported by our property taxes, by state income tax, by some donation money, a little teeny-weeny bit of federal money, but not the tourism industry. Just, I want you to think about that because it's not lost on some people. The school district, I guess, voluntarily gave up some state PILT money this year that we have been using for years and years to fund our preschool. And the preschool is populated by many of those children, the families of those, the children of those families. So we're absorbing that within our budget this year, but I'd love to have the community continue to support our preschool. It's a really important 0 to 3. I don't know if Audrey is still here. She is, yeah.
Of course she is.
We
She
need,
never
the
stops.
school district continues to need to integrate and incorporate and work with these kids that aren't even in preschool yet, because those families, if they don't have people reading to those kids, they struggle when they get to preschool. So, last thing, I just hasn't gotten the press because the press hasn't been in our school board meetings, but we are going to build a new Grand County Middle School.
Where's it going to be?
It's going to be behind the existing one on the practice field up there, and we're in the design stages right now. For that, we're going to go with the local building authority to fund that, as opposed to going out for a vote. It should not result in increased property taxes because we've got it built into our budget now. And we're going to, actually, 3 of us are going to San Francisco to make a pitch to Moody's to increase the school district's bond rating, and then we'll go out with an LBA soon with our school board. So, you can ask me questions later or give me a call. I'm in the phone book.
Thanks, Jim.
In your phone. I'm already in your phone.
Thanks, Jim.
Oh, wait, I should wait, because last time I left.
Yeah.
So, idiot question for you, Jim. So when I do my state income taxes, 5% or whatever it is, goes to the state ostensibly entirely for the purpose of education, and they don't use the principal and the education fund and all this. So I thought the state supported schools in some fashion.
Oh, the state certainly does. The state income tax helps fund public schools throughout Utah.
Okay.
And so, you know, the makeup of our budget in Grand County School District is 45-ish percent property taxes, 45%-ish state funding, and you know, under 10% from federal. The Title I is a famous kind of a title. That's one that it's all for special ed and struggling students. Well, we subsidize that hugely, because the federal funding, it's an unfunded mandate really, to serve those kids' needs, and they need to be served. But we don't have enough money, so it's coming out of our state allotment, our property tax allotment.
Thank you, Jim. I've got a question for this council, because we've got councils for our councils. We've got 10 minutes left. Does anybody have any further? Oh, we've got one more, because I was going to say we could also give the last 10 minutes to the councils to just say some things, but come on up.
My name's Carol Mayer. I speak for nobody but myself. A couple of things. Number one, the asphalt plant out in the county is spewing stinky, smelly, possibly toxic air. I wonder if anyone has looked into that yet?
Into where?
Toxic, the asphalt plant. Asphalt, what's
That's
being
the first time
spewed
I've heard
is
of it. Have
possibly
you heard of it before?
toxic. So that you guys can talk about that. City, my trash, the way I fill up my trash container has doubled and tripled since we've shut down the recycling. Have you looked ahead to what our landfills are going to look like? And what are we doing? What kind of timetable? I rely on that. I love to recycle. It's really important to me. I'm amazed at the amount of trash that has gone into my trash can. And I tear up things, I cut up things. I don't throw big things of plastic whole in there. Everything gets cut up. And I'm still doubling and tripling. And I'm just one single woman and a dog. And that's it in my household. So, and one other thing, if we keep talking about USU as the golden cow that's going to totally change our community and have new jobs and diversity, what jobs are there going to be that is going to so diversify our community? Also, what kind of population are we looking at out there? We don't talk about that, but we have a whole population center that's going to be out there. And what are we doing? I mean, that's infrastructure and businesses and probably hotels out there. Are we really looking at the overall, other than this pie-in-the-sky destination campus is the way it was called in 2012. And it's really not a destination campus anymore. Thank you.
I'll speak to the recycling. The recycling center has not closed down. It is still open. It's not opened as much, and there's a lot of reasons for that. There are plastics that we don't take. Would you help me which ones they are?
I don't, but they're the similar ones that many recycling operations
Yeah,
have
because
stopped taking.
the carbon print of shipping those is greater than the savings to the environment and to other things. We take glass, cardboard, office paper, aluminum, tin, number one. Number two, plastics. We still have the monthly drive to take electronics. The recycle center is in a transition. It is in a transition. There will be some type and probably an increase in the type of recycling you will see. We are waiting for a lot of moving parts to come together. And once those moving parts come together, we'll be able to let the community know what is going on. Oh, and cardboard. Cardboard's really important. That's one of the types of recycling that really pays for itself. And recycling is important. But more than recycling, we need to look at reducing, reusing, repurposing. And now there's another one, and it's called refuse. That we need to, as a society, refuse to even buy or take things that we don't need. Our landfills right now, I think Moab landfill has how many years left?
It's partly dependent on how our composting program does, because that'll divert a significant volume of the green waste that's going there, but it's still somewhere in the 8 to 12 year range.
Yeah, so and that's been, and that'll change according to the type of development and such that goes around there. But Klondike has a long lifespan. I mean, it's, and none of us in this room will be around to see the end of Klondike. So that has been looked at. But recycling is going on. Some people don't think we recycle glass, but we repurpose glass, which is more important than recycling. Because if you're reusing it, that's better than even recycling. That's the step above. So we do encourage. Green Solution doesn't pick up glass anymore because of danger, but it can be brought up to the center. It does not even need to be separated. So, yes.
So upon a positive note, the city is revising its waste hauling contract, and we'll be reviewing those proposals from vendors shortly. And part of that RFP had a consolidation of waste pickup with recycling. So if you're in the city, recycling is likely to become more convenient. And depending on what services are offered, possibly additional commodities taken. Not sure about that yet, and hopefully the nationwide and international recycling situation will improve, and more commodities can be recycled again soon.
But right now it's a national, it's not just Moab, we're nationally suffering. Yeah, think of that. They don't want our garbage.
So, Emily, if I may.
Sure.
On the USU front, we've just issued the contract to build a road up there. That was the community's belief that the USU campus is a great thing to have. Their development is, they're planning a new academic building that they call Phase 1 that they hope to get started on next year. By Leanna Etchberger's own estimate, they're talking about during Phase 1 about 15 new jobs, about half of which are part-time. So it's not a big deal for Phase 1. All right. At the same time, the city and county are considering a community reinvestment area. This is a trick that's been used in other metropolitan areas to, as Mr. Everett would tell you, as well did Zachariah Levine, as being another tool to direct development where you want it to go. And I don't dispute that. I'm still on the fence about it myself. I was worried about, for me, it's a bit of a Faustian.
Faustian.
Thank you. Faustian bargain in the sense it's going to take the school a while to get going. All right, and the idea of a destination campus, a large campus where a lot of people students come to live, and a much larger staff, which is what we all really want. I mean, I came from the University of Colorado back in Boulder, and I know how good that's been for the town there. But we're trying to keep on supporting the school, because if we don't, it'll never happen, and we think that'll be a good thing. The downside of it all, and this is that there is residential and commercial development that will be accelerated out there if we do community reinvestment area. Growth will happen no matter what. So the argument for doing the CRA, again, is that we'll have more control, more tools at our disposal, the ability to be able to direct some incremental tax income to where we'd like it to go. And I'm balancing that in my own mind against the fact that I'm not really, you remember the slide that David showed way back here, agnostic and so on? In terms of workforce housing, I'm aggressive about it. I'm trying to push policies for that housing, but growth in general, more shopping centers. I mean, I don't want us to become another St. George or another Wasatch Front. So some growth is fine, but anyway, I'm still treading that fine line myself. Okay.
Thank you, Mike. So I just want to say thank you to these two councils. Yeah, I know. Let the clapping ensue. I want to thank us all for running for public office and making a commitment to sit in meetings just like this every other week, if not every week, to tackle all of the issues that were brought to us tonight.
Many of us have been in meetings since 1 o'clock this afternoon or earlier.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. But it is our pleasure. And so thank you all for coming together, and thank you all, wherever you may be, for participating however you did with this town hall. I feel like I learned a lot and will take away a lot from this. And hopefully you have some ice cream waiting for you at home, like I do, as a treat to end the evening. Thank you all. Thank you all.
You anticipate doing this again sometime, Emily? What do you think?
Sure.